Welcome to the first ever podcast here for the State of the Bolts. What we're going to be talking about in this segment here is who we believe will be the 2021 final 53-man roster on the offensive side of the ball for the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to be giving a brief analysis on who we think will make the roster, who will be left out. So let's go ahead and get into this here, starting with the quarterback position. So with the first string spot, I do believe we are going to have our rookie of the year in Justin Herbert leading the way. What hasn't Justin Herbert done his rookie season? He broke every single record that you can for a rookie. And if it wasn't for Anthony Lynn, could have had even a couple more accolades under his name. Phenomenal player. All the changes and different things the Chargers have done here in the offseason have been with the current theme of improving the team for Justin Herbert to continue thriving into a sophomore season. And there's no reason to believe why he wouldn't. Now, with the second string quarterback, I do believe this is one of the most underrated signings here that we did make this offseason in Chase Daniels. And I believe this, so not necessarily because I think he will contribute on the field, but I do think he will contribute as a secondary quarterbacks coach. Now, let me explain why I say this. Now, we did hire Shane Day as our quarterbacks coach, and Chase Daniels has experience in that Joe Lombardi system playing with the New Orleans Saints. He is aware of the playbook, the different things that Joe Lombardi is trying to instill here on the team, and he will serve as a great asset to Justin Herbert on the practice field during game days, helping him in the film room to understand how these different plays works, what he's looking at, and it'll only help elevate his game even further. I do believe the Chargers will carry three quarterbacks on the roster this season, and I do think they will keep Easton Stick on the team. Easton Stick's a guy that they drafted in the 5th round not too long ago. He hasn't really been able to bring what he did in college over to the NFL level, but it hasn't necessarily been his fault. He's been playing behind some great quarterbacks in Phillip Rivers, Tyrod Taylor, and now Justin Herbert. But he is an asset to this team on the community, hard worker, great role model. And I don't know if he'll necessarily be used in this role here with the Los Angeles Chargers, but he does fit a similar mold to what the New Orleans Saints did have in Taysom Hill. It could be an interesting caveat if Joe Lombardi does decide to use Easton Stick in that role. But if he doesn't, I do think the Chargers will have him stick around, see what they do got in this player, and then further evaluate him in the 2022 season if they do want to re-sign him or not. Now, let's go into the running backs room. With the running back one position, I don't think it's any surprise here to any Chargers fan. I think that's Austin Ekeler's role. If you guys don't follow Austin Ekeler on Instagram, please give him a follow. This is one of the best players, in my opinion, one of my players on the roster team. He is pound for pound one of the strongest players in the NFL. Continue to evaluate his game from being an undrafted free agent to being on the field, winning that first round spot for the running back spot over Melvin Gordon, and he's continued to evaluate his game. One of the things that stands out to me right off the bat is I think he will be using that Alvin Kamara role with the New Orleans Saints. He's kind of do it all back in terms of running between the tackles, running the outside. He's a great asset in the passing game. And I wouldn't be surprised or call it a stretch to think that he could break that 1,000-yard receiving mark for a running back this year with the Chargers under Joe Lombardi. I do think he will be one of the pieces that will be most utilized on the offensive side of the ball. And he's going to continue to evaluate his game here in his second season off that big contract with the Chargers. Now, the running back 2 spot. Now, this is one spot that I do believe a lot of fans will not necessarily agree with me on, but I do think Larry Roundtree will win that role. Reason being is because Larry Roundtree is a similar player to Austin Ekeler in terms of he's able to run between the tackles or run outside, be an asset in the passing game. But there is one interesting part of his game that Austin Ekeler or the other running backs don't possess, which is he's a great pass blocker. Now, again, we did mention this a couple times. Joe Lombardi is the new offensive coordinator, so we are aware that the Chargers are going to be trying to unlock that deep passing game with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and their speedy receivers. Having a great running back that can block on 3rd and long, on 2nd and long, these different plays is a valuable asset to have. And this is something that Larry Roundtree does have in his game. I think ultimately he is a hard-nosed player and has a great college career, and that will continue to transcend into the NFL. And he will be making immediate impact here in his first season with the Chargers. Now, with the third running back role, this is going to be another surprise to a lot of people. It's going to be between Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. I do think Joshua Kelly will ultimately win that role for 2 main reasons. And those are going to be, one, the best asset any player can have in the NFL is availability. While Justin Jackson is a great player, he has been injured for extensive amount of time throughout his NFL career. Um, and being on that last year of his contract with the Chargers is not necessarily a good thing. One thing that I do believe Tom Telesco and staff are trying to implement is this new offensive scheme they are trying to run, and then the continuity of that throughout the next couple of years to really unlock Justin Herbert's full potential. I don't believe Justin Jackson, excuse me, will be on the team previous to this year. I don't think the theme of signing running backs in free agency is something that has been kind of falling out of place with the NFL free agency circles. You can get these guys in the draft and later rounds for really cheap. Um, and I just don't think he's gonna be on the Chargers past this season. Now, Joshua Kelly, on the other hand, he does possess different traits that the other two running backs that I do believe will be the number 1 and 2 guys don't have, which is he's a more of a power back. He can be used in specific role plays, such as a short yardage back on 32 when you're trying to run down the clock in these close games. He can be used in goal line situations. And being the number 3 guy on the roster, you don't have to count on him during games. You can use him as a gadget player. I also do think he has the ability to play special teams, which but the Chargers, we all know, special teams has been their Achilles heels for quite a bit of time. So I think those 3 things will help Joshua Kelly earn that last roster spot. Not to mention he's still on that rookie deal. You gave up some good value getting him in the 4th round of the draft. And you've only had him for 1 year where he had a bad year, but I don't think that's necessarily on him. Rookie years for NFL running backs necessarily aren't the best. You see guys like Melvin Gordon having a fumbling issue, but then coming on strong later on in his career. And then also the fact that he was running behind the worst offensive line. I think that's another additional thing that you do have to consider. But I do think he will make that final spot. Now that brings us to another crowded group here, which is the wide receivers group. I do think there's no surprise to who the number 2 guy, the first and second guy are going to be with Keenan Allen, our captain on offense, the best receiver, one of the best route runners in the NFL. And then Mike Williams, that big play threat, that deep zone guy who can catch those 50-50 balls. But we do have a number of guys on the team after that will definitely be challenging for a roster spot. I do think the number 3 guy will be Tyron Johnson. He really came on strong last year as a deep threat guy, making some really clutch plays. One of the main ones that I can think off the top of my head here was against the Atlanta Falcons. We were coming back on a game-winning drive with 2 minutes left in the 4th quarter. He made a really big catch that put him in field goal range for that game-winning field goal. And then you also have Jalen Guyton, who's another speedy guy. Was absolutely burning defenses last year. Some really big games. He played a really big part in that Raiders game, that second Raider game in the season. Made some big plays over in Tampa Bay as well against the Super Bowl champs. I think those will be the number 3 and 4 guys, slot guys, kind of alternating there. And then we did make a big signing this year with our 3rd round draft pick in Joshua Palmer. I do think Joshua Palmer will not have a big role his rookie season, but he will play a facet in the offense. I think he will be that number 5 receiver. From what I've seen from him, I know a lot of Chargers fans weren't too happy with him being drafted in the 3rd round, but he did make some really big play against some top level cornerbacks who did get drafted pretty high in Patrick Surtain, Horn from South Carolina. This is a kid who made some big plays with not the best roster, right? I mean, Tennessee didn't have the best quarterback, best offensive line, didn't have a strong passing game, but he was still able to really show what he can do and kind of shine in certain situations. And I think that having a great quarterback, great offensive system can really help him unlock his game. I think they'll bring him on sparingly, but he'll definitely increase his playing time as the season does go on, and he'll play even a bigger role in his second season and so forth. Now, we do have 2. I think there will be one more spot that will be open on the receivers room. I do think we'll carry 6 guys. And I think that battle will be between KJ Hill and Joe Reed. Now, I'm on the inclination that Joe Reed will get the spot, mainly because Joe Reed does possess some traits that KJ Hill doesn't, in terms of he's a good gadget player. He can be used in certain screens. He can be used on some stretch plays. He has special teams ability, punt returning, kick returner. He did have some great numbers here in college, and I mean, he's shown some flashes here in his rookie season where he has made some plays. Didn't get a lot of playing time, but from what I've seen of him, I can tell he's not a bad player. KJ Hill did get more opportunities and didn't make the most of them. He had a lot of drops. I can see him trying to sneak him onto a practice squad, but I don't know necessarily if he'll get picked up by another team or not. But I do see Joe Reed winning that spot. Now that does bring us on to the tight end position. Now, with the tight ends, we did lose one of our bigger assets this year in Hunter Henry, but we did replace him with Jared Cook, who I don't think is necessarily a bad choice. Jared Cook posted similar numbers to Henry. He's a big passing catch tight end, which is exactly what you need in this New Orleans Saints scheme that we are running. Now, with that being said, with that second spot, we do have a guy that played a big role in last year, and a lot of people were really high on him in Darnell Parham, big 6'8" tight end, red zone threat, made some really big plays in the clutch last season as well. I think he'll play a big role. Now, for that third spot, I think it's kind of hard because you just re-signed Steven Anderson, who had a pretty good year last year, to a 1-year deal, but then you also signed your third round pick in Trey McKitty. Trey McKitty, again, he has something that the other tight ends on the roster don't have, which is that blocking ability. Steven Anderson also doesn't possess that. I do believe this will edge Trey McKitty to get that third spot on the tight end. And I do think Trey McKitty will develop into an overall good tight end in a couple of years, but he will have a big role in the 2021 season as a blocking tight end. I can see him being in there with Larry Roundtree on these deep passing plays. And I do think he will edge Steven Anderson for that role. Now, going on to the offensive line, let's start off with the left tackle position. We do have our first round pick in Rashawn Slater. Rashawn was one of the top prospects at the left tackle position, him and Penny Sewell. I do think Rashawn will be the unanimous starter for the Chargers, having Trey Pipkins back him up here on the left side, giving Justin Herbert a solidified left tackle for years to come. At the left guard spot, we did sign in the free agency this year Matt Filer, longtime starting guard for the Pittsburgh Steelers, did play a little bit of right tackle as well, but serviceable player, definitely above average, definitely an upgrade over what we had previously with Dan Feeney. I think he will play a very valuable role, helping the Chargers solidify that passing game. And behind him, we have our 5th-round draft pick. I believe his name is Brandon Hamus, 4-year starter for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is a guy who again, the best thing a player can have is availability, and he's never missed a game. I do see a lot of traits in this game as well that does impress me to lead to believe that he could even challenge for that starting right guard spot with another player we'll mention here in a second. But he's definitely a good depth piece to have. Now, moving on to the center, which is, again, probably the most important signing of all offseason, was Corey Linsley, the best center from PFF last year. He's a guy who's going to be an immediate captain on the offensive line, help command the huddle, help diagnose different blitzes and different things for Justin Herbert to help him even elevate his game a little bit further. So that one, there's not a lot to say on that. I mean, he's the best center in the game. This is the best sign the Chargers did make this year. Behind him, you do have Scott Quessenberry. Guy's been on the roster for quite a bit of time now. Player from UCLA. He's not a bad option as well. Not a bad depth piece to have. He's going to be backup center. When you move over to the right guard spot, you do have Oday Aboush, kind of a journeyman throughout his career. But he did play really well for the Detroit Lions last year. I'll put him right in the range of like average in the NFL for guards. When you do have an improved line, like the Chargers have improved theirs, you don't need the best guards, right? You just need someone who's going to get the job done. And I think Abushi is that guy. Now, I do think Brandon Hamus, bearing how he does on this OTAs and in the offseason and preseason, I do think he does have the ability to challenge him for that spot. But I do think Abushi will ultimately get that nod over him. Now, when we go over to the right tackle position, we do have a guy that we signed a year ago in Brian Bulaga, very good right tackle, but had a really injury-riddled first year with the Chargers. I do think if he's able to kind of get past that stretch of injuries, play at least 13 games for the Chargers, I think this offensive line of the Chargers might be right outside the top 10. It might be top 12, but it's a well improved from what Justin Herbert had in his first year with the Chargers. And imagine if Justin Herbert was able to do what he did with the Chargers in 2020 with that offensive line, imagine what he's going to do when we actually do have people blocking for him. He's not scrambling every second of his life. I do think Brian Bulaga will kind of spell those injuries a little bit and play. And then right behind him, we do have Storm Norton backing him up. Now, this is who I think will be the players who will make the final 53-man roster on the offensive side of the ball for the Los Angeles Chargers. Please let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know if I missed out a guy or if you think there's a dark horse who might win a spot. But other than that, thank you so much for watching our first video. Please let me know how I can improve if you like this content, if I did horrible and you want me to get off YouTube. Any criticism or support is definitely appreciated. But let me know. Leave a comment down below. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good rest of your day.